An imposing police officer towers over a trembling elderly black woman on a busy street corner in Atlanta. Her weathered hands clutch a cell phone as tears stream down her face. "I don't care who your son claims to be," the officer sneers, ripping the phone away. Suddenly, sleek black government vehicles screech to a halt around them. A distinguished man in an impeccable suit emerges. "That's my mother you're harassing, Officer Daniels," he says calmly, revealing a diplomatic badge. "And you've just created an international incident. What happens when a powerful racist cop meets his match in a US ambassador fighting for his mother's dignity? If you're watching this story about justice overcoming racial discrimination, drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. If you believe in standing up against injustice wherever it appears, hit that like and subscribe button, because tomorrow's special episode reveals how ordinary citizens can use the power of community to fight systemic racism when the system fails them. Eloise Bennett woke before dawn, as she had done every day for the past 50 years. At 75, her body moved slower, but her mind remained sharp as the day she first arrived in America from Jamaica. Her modest home in Atlanta's West End neighborhood was filled with memories, faded photographs of her late husband, academic awards earned by her son, and trinkets from her homeland. As an immigrant who worked her way up from cleaning houses to becoming a respected elementary school teacher, Eloise had earned the affectionate title of Miss Ellie among neighbors who sought her wisdom. This morning followed her comforting routine. She tended to her vibrant garden filled with Jamaican herbs and flowers, a small piece of her homeland transplanted to Georgia soil. The scent of thyme and Scotch bonnet peppers reminded her of Kingston markets. By 7, she was preparing for her weekly church service, carefully selecting a lavender dress and matching hat that had become her Sunday signature. Her son, Marcus Bennett, called as she was adjusting her hat in the mirror. Despite the 6-hour time difference from Jamaica, he never missed their Sunday morning check-in. "Morning, Mama, you heading to church soon?" His deep voice carried the authority befitting his position as the United States ambassador to Jamaica, a remarkable achievement for the son of immigrants. At 48, Marcus had risen through diplomatic ranks through brilliance and determination, his appointment celebrated throughout Atlanta's Caribbean community. "Yes, my boy, Pastor Williams is speaking on perseverance today." Eloise smiled at his familiar concern. Their bond remained unbreakable despite his demanding schedule and frequent travels. She never boasted about her son's position, but the pride glowed in her eyes whenever someone mentioned his name. "I'll be in D.C. next week for meetings. I can extend the trip and come see you," Marcus offered, knowing his mother would refuse, as she always did, not wanting to disrupt his important work. "No need to trouble yourself, I'm doing just fine," Eloise assured him, though she hadn't mentioned the changes in her neighborhood. The increased police presence had been noticeable over the past months as new luxury apartments broke ground several blocks away. Longtime residents whispered about revitalization efforts that seemed designed to push them out. After church, Eloise stopped at the corner market, as she did every Sunday, to purchase ingredients for her traditional Sunday dinner. Outside the store, she witnessed something that sent a chill through her body. Her friend Willard, an 80-year-old retired postal worker, was being aggressively questioned by a police officer. Willard's cane trembled as the officer, whose nameplate read Caldwell, demanded identification and questioned why he was loitering outside a business he had patronized for decades. "Sir, I'm just waiting for my daughter to pick me up," Willard explained, his voice shaking. Officer Richard Caldwell, a stocky white man with cold eyes, towered over Willard. "I've had complaints about vagrants in this area. Move along or I'll have to take you in." Eloise stepped forward, her small frame somehow commanding. "Officer, this man has lived in this neighborhood longer than that store has existed. His daughter will be here any minute." Caldwell's gaze shifted to Eloise, something dangerous flickering in his expression before he reluctantly stepped back. As Willard's daughter pulled up moments later, Eloise couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing in her beloved community. The encounter left her unsettled, a premonition of troubles to come that would soon engulf her own life and expose the festering racism hidden beneath the surface of her changing neighborhood. Tuesday morning dawned with unexpected warmth for early spring. Eloise decided to take advantage of the pleasant weather to visit West Side Market for fresh produce. She dressed carefully in a cream blouse and navy skirt, her silver hair neatly pinned, the embodiment of elderly dignity. The weight of her reusable shopping bag, emblazoned with Atlanta Public Schools Retired Educators, slung comfortably across her shoulder as she set out on her familiar route. Unknown to Eloise, Officer Richard Caldwell had started his shift in a foul mood. Earlier that morning, he had been reprimanded by his supervisor for excessive force complaints that had accumulated in his file over the past year. 6 incidents, all involving black residents, all dismissed with minimal investigation. The dressing down had left him seething, looking for someone to bear the brunt of his frustration. Caldwell patrolled the area in his cruiser, eyes narrowing when he spotted Eloise walking slowly with her now-filled shopping bag. Something about her deliberate pace and the bulging bag triggered his suspicious nature. He pulled his patrol car alongside the curb and stepped out, adjusting his utility belt with a practiced motion that emphasized the gun at his hip. "Ma'am, I need to see what's in that bag," he called out, his tone immediately authoritative rather than inquiring. Eloise turned, surprised by the sudden confrontation. "Officer, I've just left the grocery store. These are my purchases." Her Jamaican accent, softened by decades in America, but still present, colored her careful words. Caldwell approached closer, towering over her 5'3" frame. "There's been a series of shoplifting incidents in this area. I need to verify those items were purchased." Eloise felt a flutter of indignation but maintained her composure. "I have my receipt right here, officer." She reached into her purse, extracting a neatly folded slip of paper. Caldwell barely glanced at it. "That could be from anything. I need to see inside the bag." "Officer, I am 75 years old and have lived in this neighborhood for 50 years. I was a teacher at Washington High School for 30 of them. I do not steal." Eloise's dignity emanated from her like a force field. "Lady, I don't care if you're the Queen of England. Either show me what's in the bag, or I'll have to assume you're hiding something." Caldwell's hand moved to rest on his handcuffs. By now, several passers-by had slowed to observe the interaction. A young woman across the street had her phone out, clearly recording the encounter. Eloise felt humiliation burning her cheeks as Caldwell continued to demand access to her belongings without cause. "I would like to speak to your supervisor," Eloise said firmly, reaching for her cell phone in her purse. "And I'm going to call my son." Caldwell's face darkened. "Put your hand where I can see it. Reaching into your bag like that could be interpreted as a threat." "I'm getting my phone," Eloise explained, fear beginning to replace indignation. "Now you're refusing to comply with an officer's commands," Caldwell said, stepping closer as Eloise managed to pull out her phone and press her son's contact number. The call connected just as Caldwell grabbed her wrist, causing her to drop the phone to the sidewalk. "Marcus," she cried out before Caldwell snatched the device. "I don't care who your son is," he sneered, pocketing her phone. "You're interfering with police business, and that's grounds for arrest." Tears of shock and humiliation filled Eloise's eyes as Caldwell roughly turned her around, the contents of her grocery bag spilling onto the sidewalk, tomatoes rolling into the street, a carton of eggs shattering on the concrete. The crowd of onlookers had grown, most filming now, expressions of outrage and helplessness on their faces. "Do you believe police should be able to search citizens without probable cause?" Comment number 1. If you think officers like Caldwell abuse their power too often, or number 2, if you believe they're just doing their job to keep communities safe. Like and subscribe to see how this shocking confrontation escalates when a simple grocery trip turns into an international incident. What could possibly happen when Eloise's son receives that interrupted call? The answer will leave you speechless. Marcus Bennett sat in a mahogany-paneled conference room at the State Department in Washington, D.C., discussing an upcoming trade agreement with senior officials when his phone vibrated. Normally, he would ignore calls during such important meetings, but seeing his mother's name flash across the screen sent an instinctive wave of concern through him. Eloise never called during his working hours unless something was wrong. "Excuse me, gentlemen, I need to take this," he said, stepping away from the table. "Mom, is everything all right?" The words he heard next turned his blood cold, his mother's frightened voice calling his name, then the sound of a struggle before the connection cut. Without hesitation, Marcus strode back to the table. "I apologize, but I have a family emergency. My mother appears to be in trouble." The gravitas in his voice brooked no argument from the assembled diplomats. As ambassador to Jamaica, Marcus had earned a reputation for unflappable composure, making his sudden departure all the more notable. In the hallway, Marcus repeatedly tried calling back, each attempt going straight to voicemail. His diplomatic training kept his external demeanor calm, but inside, generations of warnings passed down from father to son about interactions with police played in his mind like a grim soundtrack. His father's voice echoed, "No matter your accomplishments, to some you'll always be just another black man to fear." Marcus called his security detail, a privilege of his diplomatic status. "Jacob, my mother may be in trouble. Last known location is her neighborhood in West End, Atlanta. I need to get there immediately and I need you to contact local authorities." Within 15 minutes, Marcus was aboard a State Department helicopter bound for Andrews Air Force Base, where a jet waited to fly him to Atlanta. During the flight, his security team worked channels to locate Eloise. Social media provided the first clues. Videos were already circulating of an elderly Jamaican woman being harassed by a police officer on Westside Avenue. The Atlanta Field Office of the Diplomatic Security Service dispatched agents ahead of Marcus's arrival. When his plane touched down, a black Suburban with diplomatic plates was waiting on the tarmac. Jacob, his head of security, briefed him on the drive. "Your mother is still at the scene with the officer. He's detained her but hasn't formally arrested her yet. The situation is tense. Local police captain has been notified but hasn't intervened." Marcus loosened his tie slightly, the only outward sign of his anger. "What do we know about the officer?" Richard Caldwell, 12 years on the force, multiple complaints of racial profiling, no formal disciplinary actions. He's considered untouchable because of his connections to the police union and his uncle's position as a city councilman. As they approached the scene, Marcus could see a crowd had gathered. His mother, still standing but leaning against a wall, looked smaller than he remembered. Officer Caldwell stood guard over her, one hand resting on his weapon. The scattered groceries on the ground, the humble items his mother had purchased, struck Marcus as a profound symbol of dignity denied. The convoy of diplomatic vehicles created an immediate stir as they screeched to a halt. Marcus emerged, his tailored suit and commanding presence drawing all eyes. The diplomatic security agents formed a perimeter as he approached Caldwell directly. "I'm Ambassador Marcus Bennett. That's my mother you're detaining, Officer Caldwell." His voice carried the weight of his office without raising in volume. Caldwell's eyes widened briefly, before narrowing with defiance. "I don't care who you are. This woman was uncooperative during a standard investigation." Marcus produced his diplomatic credentials. "This woman is Eloise Bennett, mother of a U.S. ambassador and entitled to certain diplomatic courtesies. More importantly, she's a law-abiding citizen who appears to have been targeted without cause. She was behaving suspiciously and refused to comply with orders," Caldwell insisted, though his confidence visibly wavered. "I see 6 witnesses filming this incident who would likely testify otherwise," Marcus replied. "Release her immediately and return her property, or I assure you the consequences will extend far beyond your precinct." Caldwell's hand tightened on his weapon. "Are you threatening an officer of the law, sir? Because diplomatic immunity doesn't cover interference with police business." The standoff stretched for a tense moment, neither man willing to back down. Marcus's security detail subtly shifted positions, hands inside their jackets. The crowd held its collective breath, cameras still recording every word. "No, officer," Marcus said finally. "I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you that your actions have implications you haven't considered. Now I'll ask once more, release my mother, or explain to your superiors why the State Department is formally involved in what should have been a routine interaction." The tense standoff between Marcus and Officer Caldwell attracted immediate attention from police leadership. Within minutes, Atlanta Police Chief Gerald Moreno arrived at the scene, his unmarked car parting the growing crowd of onlookers. The chief, a veteran officer with political aspirations, immediately recognized the potential public relations disaster unfolding before him. "Ambassador Bennett," Chief Moreno said, extending his hand. "I deeply regret this unfortunate situation. Officer Caldwell, stand down immediately." Caldwell's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Chief, this woman was uncooperative during a routine stop. I was following protocol for suspicious—" "That's enough, officer," Moreno cut him off sharply. "Return Ms. Bennett's belongings and report to the station. We'll discuss this incident in private." Despite the direct order, Caldwell hesitated, the muscle in his jaw working visibly, before he reluctantly handed Eloise's phone and purse back to her. As Caldwell retreated to his patrol car, Eloise finally collapsed against her son, her body trembling. "My blood pressure, Marcus," she whispered. "I need my medication." Marcus signaled his security team, who immediately arranged for emergency medical services. Within minutes, paramedics were checking Eloise's vitals, finding her blood pressure dangerously elevated. "She needs to rest and take her medication," the paramedic advised. "This level of stress is dangerous for someone her age." Chief Moreno stood nearby, alternating between apologetic smiles toward Marcus and frantic phone calls to the mayor's office. The incident was already spreading across social media, with hashtags like "Certo Justice for Eloise" and "Under Diplomatic Intervention" trending locally. "Ambassador Bennett, please accept my sincere apologies," Moreno said once he'd ended his calls. "I assure you Officer Caldwell will be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. The Atlanta Police Department does not condone racial profiling or harassment of any kind." Marcus maintained his diplomatic composure. "I appreciate your quick response, Chief Moreno, but this isn't an isolated incident. My mother mentioned increased police presence in this neighborhood has led to multiple cases of harassment among elderly black residents." Moreno's smile tightened. "We've increased patrols due to reports of property crimes in the area. I assure you our officers are trained in community policing." "Then perhaps their training requires review," Marcus replied coolly. "I'll be involving the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division to ensure this incident receives proper scrutiny. Officer Caldwell's body camera footage should be preserved immediately." "Of course, Ambassador. We're completely transparent," Moreno assured him, though his expression suggested otherwise. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare a statement for the press." As the chief walked away, Marcus helped his mother into his diplomatic vehicle. The paramedics had advised taking her home rather than to the hospital, provided she remained calm and took her medication. Marcus's security team had already collected the scattered groceries, placing them carefully in the trunk. "I'm so sorry you experienced this, Mom," Marcus said softly as they pulled away from the curb. Eloise patted his hand. "It's not my first encounter with racism, son, just the first time I had an ambassador to call." Despite her attempt at lightness, her hand still trembled. Marcus was about to respond when he noticed something concerning in the rearview mirror. "Jacob, we're being followed." 2 patrol cars had fallen into formation behind their diplomatic convoy, maintaining a precise distance. "Standard procedure, sir," Jacob replied, though his tone indicated otherwise. "I'll take an alternate route to be safe." As Jacob turned onto a side street, the patrol cars also turned. When he made another unexpected turn, they followed. It wasn't until they approached Eloise's neighborhood that Marcus understood the true purpose of the escort. The street leading to his mother's home was blocked by 3 additional police vehicles, their lights flashing. "What's the meaning of this?" Marcus demanded as Jacob slowed the car. An officer approached their window. "Just a routine traffic diversion, sir. There was a water main break ahead. You'll need to take the long way around." The explanation might have been believable, if not for the smirk Marcus caught on the officer's face, the same expression of smug authority he'd seen on Officer Caldwell. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. Despite his diplomatic status and the chief's public apology, the police were letting him know they controlled these streets. "Take us to a hotel," Marcus instructed Jacob. "My mother isn't staying in her home tonight." The implied intimidation had only strengthened his resolve to pursue justice, but he wouldn't risk his mother's safety in the process. "Did that police escort seem like protection or intimidation to you?" Comment number 1, if you think the officers were sending Marcus a warning. Or number 2, if you believe it was just procedural. Like this video if you're outraged by how quickly apologies turn hollow when power is threatened. Subscribe to find out what consequences await Officer Caldwell. Will justice be served, or will the powerful police union shield him from accountability? The battle between diplomatic immunity and the blue wall of silence has only just begun. By morning, the video of Eloise's harassment had gone viral. National news outlets picked up the story, their headlines emphasizing the diplomatic angle. U.S. Ambassador's mother racially profiled in Atlanta, and diplomatic immunity tested. On American soil, protesters gathered outside Atlanta Police Headquarters, their signs demanding justice not just for Eloise, but for countless unnamed victims of similar treatment. Marcus watched the coverage from the hotel suite where he'd relocated, his mother temporarily. Chief Moreno's press conference played on the screen, his rehearsed statement striking Marcus as hollow. "We take these allegations seriously and have placed Officer Caldwell on paid administrative leave pending investigation. The Atlanta Police Department is committed to serving all citizens equally." Eloise sat nearby, sipping tea, her composure partially restored after a night's rest. "They always say the same things, but nothing changes," she observed quietly. Marcus's phone rang the Secretary of State, calling for the third time that morning. "Marcus, while I sympathize with your mother's situation, we need you to handle this discreetly," the Secretary advised. "The Jamaican trade agreement needs your attention, and frankly, this is becoming a distraction." "With all due respect, Madam Secretary, my mother was racially profiled and threatened by a police officer. That's not a distraction. It's a civil rights violation. I understand, but your position requires diplomatic neutrality on domestic matters. Perhaps allow local authorities to handle—" "Local authorities are part of the problem," Marcus interrupted. An unprecedented breach of protocol that momentarily silenced his superior. "I won't be returning to Jamaica until this matter is properly addressed." After ending the call, Marcus received a disturbing email from a community activist who'd been investigating Officer Caldwell. Attached were 15 complaints filed against Caldwell over the past 3 years, all from black residents, all dismissed without thorough investigation. The pattern was undeniable. Marcus forwarded the documents to his contacts at the Justice Department before calling his mother's doctor. The physician arrived at the hotel within the hour, concerned about Eloise's condition. "Her blood pressure remains elevated, and I'm detecting signs of anxiety," the doctor explained after examining Eloise. "At her age, this level of stress poses serious risks. She needs rest and a calm environment." Even as Marcus absorbed this worrying diagnosis, his security team alerted him to a new development. The Atlanta Police Department had issued a statement claiming the body camera footage from Caldwell's encounter with Eloise was corrupted due to technical issues and unavailable for review. "That's convenient," Marcus remarked bitterly. He immediately called a civil rights attorney who specialized in police misconduct cases. "This happens more often than you'd think," Attorney Sophia Washington explained. "But in your mother's case, we have multiple civilian recordings. The problem isn't evidence, it's the system protecting its own." Sophia elaborated on Caldwell's connections within the department. His uncle, Councilman Gregory Caldwell, chaired the committee overseeing police funding. His former partner was now head of internal affairs. This network of relationships had insulated him from consequences for years. As Marcus strategized with Sophia, Eloise received a disturbing phone call from her neighbor. "Ellie, you need to know someone spray-painted something awful on your front door." Marcus dispatched security to investigate. The photos they sent back confirmed his worst fears. Crude racial slurs and the words, "Go home immigrant," emblazoned across his mother's door in red paint. The violation of his mother's home hardened Marcus's resolve. That evening, as he helped Eloise settle into the hotel room, his phone rang with an unlisted number. "Ambassador Bennett," a disguised voice greeted him. A friendly word of advice: "Police matters are best left to police. Your diplomatic status won't protect your mother if you continue pushing. Some neighborhoods are changing, and the old residents need to accept that or move on." Before Marcus could respond, the caller hung up. The threat was unmistakable. This had evolved beyond one officer's misconduct into something more insidious. Later that night, as Eloise finally slept, Marcus received another concerning call, this time from his security chief. "Sir, I've been informed that your diplomatic security detail is being reassigned tomorrow due to resource allocation priorities. The State Department claims they need personnel for an upcoming summit. The timing wasn't coincidental. Forces were aligning to isolate Marcus and his mother, removing the protection his position afforded. Someone wanted to send a clear message that even diplomatic immunity had its limits when challenging entrenched power structures." Marcus stood at the hotel window looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The city where his mother had built her life, where she taught generations of children, was now revealed as hostile territory. But unlike the countless victims without his resources and connections, Marcus had the means to fight back. The question was how far the opposition would go to silence him, and how much his mother could endure in the process. The internal affairs investigation into Officer Caldwell's conduct proceeded with glacial slowness. After 2 weeks, no interviews had been conducted with civilian witnesses, and Eloise's formal complaint remained under review. Marcus's daily calls to police headquarters were met with increasingly dismissive responses about following proper procedures and allowing the process to work. Meanwhile, subtle shifts in media coverage began to appear. Local station WSB-TV ran a segment questioning whether diplomatic privilege was enabling Marcus to demand special treatment. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution published an opinion piece titled, "When Ambassadors Overstep: The Limits of Diplomatic Interference in Local Law Enforcement." More disturbing was the piece that appeared in a local neighborhood newsletter, which described Eloise as a confrontational figure with a history of complaints against local businesses. The characterization was completely fabricated. Eloise had never filed a complaint in her life, but the narrative was being carefully constructed to undermine her credibility. "They're trying to paint me as some angry old woman," Eloise observed, sadly, as Marcus showed her the article. "People who've known me for decades might start believing it." Marcus had been conducting his own investigation, methodically building a case file. Through community contacts, he identified 7 elderly residents who had experienced similar harassment from officers in Eloise's precinct. All described being stopped without cause, questioned aggressively, and made to feel unwelcome in their own neighborhood. All were black, and all lived in areas now coveted by developers. When Marcus presented this pattern to Internal Affairs Captain Jonathan Mills, the response was dismissive. "Random stops are part of community policing, Ambassador." Bennett, "Without specific evidence of racial motivation, these are just subjective complaints." Later that same day, Chief Moreno called Marcus directly, his tone conciliatory but his message clear. "Ambassador, I understand your frustration, but perhaps there's a more amicable resolution. The department is prepared to issue a formal apology to your mother and provide sensitivity training to Officer Caldwell." "That's wholly inadequate," Marcus replied. "My mother was publicly humiliated and threatened. Officer Caldwell has a documented pattern of similar behavior." "Documented?" "The only documentation I'm aware of is your mother's statement, which contradicts Officer Caldwell's. Without the body camera footage, it's one person's word against an officer's." "We both know why that footage is suddenly unavailable," Marcus countered. Moreno sighed audibly. "Ambassador, you're an important figure with international responsibilities. Pursuing this personal matter could have implications for your career. The State Department has expressed concerns about your continued involvement." The implied threat wasn't subtle. Marcus had already received multiple calls from his superiors urging him to resolve the situation quietly and return to his post. In Jamaica, the diplomatic community operated on unwritten rules, and he was breaking several by challenging domestic law enforcement so publicly. That evening, as Marcus worked in his temporary office at the hotel, a courier delivered an unmarked envelope. Inside was a printout of emails between Marcus and the Justice Department, discussing Caldwell's history and requesting federal intervention. These were private communications, accessed illegally. Attached was a note. Diplomatic channels should be used for diplomatic business only. The invasion of his official communications represented a serious escalation. Someone had accessed State Department emails, a federal offense, to intimidate him. Marcus immediately reported the breach to diplomatic security, but the damage was done. Someone wanted him to know they could reach into his professional life as easily as they had invaded his mother's personal space. Eloise, despite her continued anxiety, had begun meeting with the other affected residents in the hotel's conference room. Marcus found them sharing stories, building a community of support. She looked up as he entered, her expression determined despite her fatigue. "These are good people, Marcus. Salt of the earth. They worked hard all their lives, raised families in this neighborhood, and now they're being treated like criminals for walking their own streets." Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand. "Mom, the State Department is pressuring me to drop this and return to Jamaica. They're suggesting my position could be at risk." Eloise straightened, her eyes flashing with the strength that had carried her from Jamaica to America decades ago. "Your father and I didn't raise you to choose career over conscience. If standing up for what's right cost you that fancy title, then it wasn't worth having." As they spoke, Marcus's phone rang with news that drove home the seriousness of their situation. His security chief, speaking in a hushed voice, informed him, "Sir, we've received notification that your diplomatic immunity is being reviewed due to a technicality regarding your involvement in domestic law enforcement matters. The claim is that you've exceeded the scope of diplomatic protection by interfering with local police operations. The move was unprecedented and legally dubious, but it sent a clear message. The system would bend or break its own rules to protect itself from scrutiny. Without diplomatic immunity, Marcus could find himself vulnerable to the same police force. He was challenging a chilling prospect for any black man, regardless of his title. Is this systematic attempt to silence Marcus something you've seen happen? To others who challenge police misconduct, comment number 1 if you believe powerful institutions too often close ranks against whistleblowers, or number 2 if you think Marcus is just encountering standard bureaucratic processes. Like this video if you're inspired by Eloise forming a community of support among affected seniors. Subscribe to discover what unexpected ally emerges to help their cause. When diplomatic communications are compromised and immunity threatened, who can Marcus and Eloise trust? The answer may surprise you. The Atlanta Chronicle's headline struck like a physical blow. Ambassador under investigation. Sources question Jamaican development deals. The article, citing unnamed State Department officials, insinuated that Marcus had inappropriately favored certain businesses in trade negotiations. The timing made the hit piece's purpose transparent character assassination to discredit his campaign against police misconduct. Marcus had anticipated professional blowback, but the speed and coordination of the attack surprised even him. His phone rang constantly with calls from diplomatic colleagues expressing concern about the troubling allegations. The Jamaican Prime Minister requested clarification, and the embassy staff in Kingston reported unusual scrutiny from local officials. While Marcus managed the professional crisis, Eloise faced her own form of retaliation. Upon returning briefly to her neighborhood to collect additional clothing, she encountered former friends who now averted their eyes. Outside the community center, where she had volunteered for decades, a security guard asked her to leave the property. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Bennett, but your presence is causing discomfort among some members," he explained awkwardly. "Discomfort? I've been coming here every Wednesday for 20 years, Eloise replied, disbelief evident in her voice. "There's been talk about you causing trouble with the police. The board thinks it's best if you stay away until things settle down." The rejection from her community hurt more than the initial police harassment. These were people who had celebrated her son's appointment, who had shared meals in her home, who had relied on her wisdom. Now they treated her like a pariah out of fear of association. When Eloise returned to the hotel, she found Marcus on a tense call with State Department officials. His expression told her everything she needed to know. The pressure was intensifying. That was the Deputy Secretary, Marcus explained after ending the call. "Several anonymous complaints have been filed, questioning my conduct as ambassador. They're suggesting I take a voluntary leave of absence while the matters are investigated. Eloise sat heavily in the nearest chair. They're trying to force you out. It won't work, Marcus assured her, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. What's more concerning is someone's been in your house. Eloise's hand flew to her chest. What do you mean? Marcus showed her photos his security team had taken during their inspection of her home. The security system detected movement last night. Nothing obvious was taken, but drawers were opened, papers moved. They were looking for something or planting something. Even more disturbing was what the security sweep had discovered. Tiny listening devices planted in the lamps and telephone. Eloise's private home had been under surveillance for an unknown period. Who would do such a thing? She whispered, her sense of violation profound. Someone who sees us as a threat, Marcus replied grimly. The question is how high this goes. The answer came partially that evening when Marcus received an urgent call from the headmaster of his 17-year-old son, Jamal's prestigious boarding school in Virginia. Ambassador Bennett, I regret to inform you that Jamal has been placed on disciplinary probation for alleged academic dishonesty. That's impossible, Marcus responded immediately. Jamal has never cheated in his life. We found unauthorized notes during his calculus examination, the headmaster explained stiffly. Given your family's current prominence in the news, we've opted for probation rather than expulsion, but this is a serious matter. The targeting of his son, a straight-A student with no history of misconduct, removed any doubt about the coordinated nature of the attacks. Marcus immediately arranged for Jamal to be withdrawn from the school and brought to Atlanta under diplomatic protection. When Jamal arrived the following day, his story confirmed Marcus's suspicions. Dad, I didn't cheat. Someone planted those notes at my desk during a bathroom break. My calculator was also tampered with. Formulas I never entered were suddenly there. I believe you, Marcus assured him, embracing his confused and upset son. You're being punished for my actions, not yours. With his family now directly targeted, Marcus faced his most serious challenge yet. That afternoon, his diplomatic security chief delivered the news he'd been dreading. Sir, the State Department's legal counsel has raised questions about your diplomatic immunity status. They're claiming that because your mother isn't officially part of your household, incidents involving her fall outside protected diplomatic activities. The legal maneuvering was transparent. By questioning his immunity, they were opening the possibility that Marcus could be charged with interfering with police operations or even obstruction of justice. Without diplomatic protection, he would be as vulnerable as any other black man confronting police misconduct. They can't actually strip your immunity, can they? Eloise asked that evening, concern etched on her face. It's unprecedented, but they're arguing I've been acting as a private citizen, not a diplomat, Marcus explained. The goal is intimidation. If they can make us believe I might be arrested, they hope I'll back down. Instead of retreating, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his legal team, now expanded to include constitutional law experts and civil rights attorneys. As they strategized late into the night, Marcus received a text message from an unknown number. Not everyone with E. A badge supports what's happening. Check the third-floor janitor's closet at police headquarters tomorrow at 2 p.m. The cryptic message suggested something Marcus had been hoping for: a potential ally within the system itself. The question was whether it represented genuine support or an elaborate trap designed to catch him in a compromising position. With his diplomatic protection in question and his family under attack, the stakes of his next move couldn't be higher. The janitor's closet meeting presented an obvious risk, but Marcus had spent decades navigating diplomatic landmines in volatile countries. He arrived at police headquarters under the pretense of following up on his mother's complaint, accompanied by his attorney, Sophia Washington. While she engaged the desk sergeant with procedural questions, Marcus slipped away, using the emergency stairs to reach the third floor. The corridor was empty when he approached the janitor's closet. Inside, instead of a person, he found a sealed envelope taped beneath a shelf. The contents, a USB drive and a handwritten note, would prove more valuable than he could have imagined. Not all of us are corrupt, Check the footage. Follow the money. Westside Development Partners. That evening, Marcus reviewed the USB contents with his security team. It contained uncorrupted body camera footage from Officer Caldwell, not just from his mother's incident, but from a dozen similar encounters with elderly black residents. Each video showed the same pattern: aggressive questioning without cause, excessive intimidation, and clear racial animus expressed when Caldwell believed his camera was off. More shocking were the audio files of meetings between Caldwell, several other officers and representatives from Westside Development Partners. The conversations explicitly discussed clearing out undesirables from targeted neighborhoods and helping accelerate natural turnover in areas slated for luxury development. This is a coordinated campaign, Marcus realized, connecting the pattern. They're systematically harassing long-time residents to push them out of neighborhoods developers want. The whistleblower had remained anonymous, but their identity became clear the next morning when Detective Sarah Rodriguez requested a meeting with Marcus at a neutral location. An 11-year veteran of the force, Rodriguez had been investigating internal corruption until her recent reassignment to traffic duty. "They shut down my investigation 3 months ago," Rodriguez explained at their secure meeting. "I was looking into unusual patterns of police deployment and discovered officers were being assigned to harass residents in specific neighborhoods, all areas where Westside Development had recently purchased property." Rodriguez had compiled extensive evidence showing that the developer, in partnership with city officials, including Councilman Gregory Caldwell, had been orchestrating a campaign to drive down property values through increased police presence, selective code enforcement, and strategic service reductions. "They target elderly homeowners specifically," Rodriguez explained. "They're less likely to fight back and more vulnerable to pressure tactics. Once enough sell at below market rates, the developers swoop in for massive profits." This revelation transformed Marcus's understanding of his mother's harassment from an isolated incident of racial profiling to part of a systematic conspiracy connecting police, politicians, and powerful financial interests. With Rodriguez's help, Marcus arranged a secret meeting with Councilwoman Diane Chen, the lone dissenting voice on the Urban Development Committee. Chen confirmed she had been trying to expose the pattern for months, but had faced threats and obstruction. "They froze my staff budget, blocked my information requests, and spread rumors about my mental health," Chen explained. Westside Development isn't just any company. Their investors include former mayors, judges, and half the political establishment. Chen provided documents showing how Eloise's neighborhood had been specifically designated for accelerated transition code for gentrification. The police harassment was just one tactic in a broader strategy involving selective utility maintenance, denial of improvement permits to existing businesses, and strategic rerouting of public transportation. Armed with this expanded understanding, Marcus connected with other victims through Eloise's growing senior network. Each story followed the same pattern: increased police presence, harassment for minor or imagined infractions, and eventually offers to purchase their homes at below-market rates from concerned community investors who turned out to be Westside Development subsidiaries. The conspiracy's scope became even clearer when Rodriguez revealed another bombshell. "Your mother's block is phase 3 of a 5-phase development plan. The first 2 phases have already cleared out over 200 long-time residents, most of them black homeowners who'd lived there for decades." Marcus now understood why the response to his intervention had been so severe. He hadn't just challenged one officer's misconduct, but threatened a multi-million-dollar development scheme built on systemic racism and corruption. As Marcus expanded his investigation, he discovered his diplomatic security detail had been compromised. Jacob, his trusted security chief, revealed the disturbing truth during a sweep for surveillance devices. "Sir, I need to tell you something," Jacob admitted, his voice low. "2 members of your detail were approached by someone claiming to be from State Department counterintelligence. They were pressured to report on your movements and copy files from your computer. Did they comply?" Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer. "One refused and reported it through proper channels. The other," Jacob hesitated, "he's been providing them information for the past week." I discovered it during routine security protocols. The infiltration of his diplomatic security personnel, vetted and trained to protect ambassadors in dangerous situations, revealed the extraordinary lengths to which the conspiracy would go. Marcus was now fighting not just local corruption, but elements within his own government's apparatus. That night, as Marcus, Eloise, and Jamal discussed their next steps, Eloise made a powerful observation. All these people being pushed out of their homes, they can't all relocate overseas like rich folks avoiding taxes. This is our community. If we don't stand and fight here, where will it end? Her words solidified Marcus's resolve. Using his diplomatic training in coalition building, he began assembling an alliance of affected residents, sympathetic officials like Councilwoman Chen, whistleblowers like Detective Rodriguez, and civil rights organizations. Together, they would expose not just individual misconduct, but the entire corrupt system driving the displacement of black communities under the guise of urban renewal. Do you think gentrification should be regulated to protect long-time residents? Comment number 1 if you believe communities need legal protection from predatory development, or number 2 if you think market forces should determine neighborhood changes without government intervention. Like this video if you're outraged by the conspiracy. Marcus uncovered linking police harassment to real estate development. Subscribe to see how Marcus uses his diplomatic skills to build a coalition against this corruption. With his own security compromised and powerful interests threatened, can Marcus protect his family while exposing the truth? The most dangerous confrontation is yet to come. Marcus Bennett had spent his diplomatic career resolving conflicts between nations, but now he needed those skills to protect his family and community. His first strategic move was to secure independent protection. Through diplomatic channels, separate from his compromised State Department contacts, he arranged for security personnel from the Jamaican government, a gesture of support from a nation that viewed his mistreatment with grave concern. The Prime Minister considers this a matter of international significance, the Jamaican ambassador to the US told Marcus during a secure call. An attack on Jamaica's favorite son is an attack on Jamaica itself. This international dimension brought unwelcome scrutiny to those targeting Marcus. Suddenly, what had been a local matter contained within Atlanta's power structures became subject to international observation. The Jamaican government formally requested updates on the investigation into Officer Caldwell's conduct, elevating the stakes considerably. Marcus's next move was even more strategic. He contacted the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department directly, bypassing local FBI offices, potentially influenced by Atlanta politics. Using evidence compiled by Detective Rodriguez and the whistleblowers' files, he formally requested a pattern or practice investigation into the Atlanta Police Department's disproportionate enforcement in minority neighborhoods. The harassment isn't random, Marcus explained to Deputy Attorney General Harmon. It's coordinated with development interests to systematically remove black homeowners from targeted areas. The Justice Department's involvement represented a significant escalation that local officials couldn't easily dismiss. Federal investigators had subpoena power that could compel testimony from officers like Caldwell and access records that local authorities had concealed. While these institutional maneuvers proceeded, Eloise made a courageous decision. Despite ongoing threats, she volunteered to become the public face of the community's resistance. "I've lived 7 decades, she told Marcus. If not me, then who? These developers picked the wrong grandmother to intimidate." With Eloise's blessing, Marcus organized a community testimony event at Friendship Baptist Church, Atlanta's oldest black church. The gathering provided a platform for elderly residents to share their experiences of police harassment and development pressure. Local news stations initially hesitated to cover the event, but international outlets including the BBC and Al Jazeera sent correspondents, forcing domestic media to follow suit. Eloise's testimony proved particularly powerful. Standing straight, despite her 75 years, she addressed the packed church with unwavering dignity. "I taught 3 generations of Atlanta's children. I paid taxes for 50 years. I volunteered at hospitals, schools, and community centers. Yet today, I'm treated as an unwelcome intruder in the neighborhood I helped build. This isn't about one officer or one incident. It's about whether we believe communities belong to the people who built them or to those with the money to take them. Her words, broadcast globally, resonated far beyond Atlanta. Civil rights organizations mobilized support, and congressional representatives began asking questions about the relationship between police enforcement patterns and gentrification nationwide. The community testimonies generated new witnesses and evidence. Former officers came forward to confirm they had been instructed to increase stops and citations in areas targeted for development. City employees revealed they had been directed to delay essential services in certain neighborhoods to encourage resident departure. Marcus coordinated with trusted journalists to strategically release evidence, carefully timing disclosures to prevent cover-ups. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, initially hesitant, published a major investigative piece after one of their reporters received anonymous evidence linking campaign contributions from West Side development to changes in zoning regulations. As public pressure mounted, cracks appeared in the opposition. Councilman Gregory Caldwell, Officer Caldwell's uncle, publicly distanced himself from his nephew, claiming he had no knowledge of inappropriate police activities. The police union, initially steadfast in defending Caldwell, went conspicuously. Silent as evidence of his misconduct became irrefutable. Officer Caldwell himself, feeling abandoned by his once powerful supporters, attempted a desperate countermove. In a hastily arranged interview with a sympathetic local reporter, he portrayed himself as a scapegoat. "I was just following directives from superiors," he claimed. "All officers in my precinct were told to maintain heightened vigilance in transitional neighborhoods." The interview backfired spectacularly when Marcus's team released audio recordings contradicting Caldwell's claims, proving he had enthusiastically embraced and even expanded the harassment tactics. His credibility destroyed, Caldwell found himself increasingly isolated as former allies scrambled to protect themselves. Despite these successes, Marcus and Eloise still faced dangerous opposition. After particularly damaging testimony from a former city planning official, Marcus discovered that his diplomatic communications had been compromised at a deeper level than initially suspected. "They've accessed the encrypted diplomatic channel," his IT security specialist confirmed. "Sensitive communications regarding Jamaica trade negotiations have been intercepted, information that could damage international relationships and your professional standing." The breach represented an extraordinary escalation beyond local politics. Someone had committed federal crimes to access diplomatic communications, suggesting involvement from higher levels of government. The compromised negotiations could undermine Jamaica's economic interests and Marcus's effectiveness as ambassador, a direct attack on his professional responsibilities. The message was clear. The opposition would sacrifice international relations and American diplomatic interests to protect their development scheme. Marcus now faced an impossible choice between his duty to his country and justice for his mother and community. As he contemplated this dilemma, he realized the fight had become more dangerous than even he had anticipated. The situation escalated dramatically one rainy night as Marcus drove home from a strategy meeting with civil rights attorneys. A police cruiser appeared behind him, lights flashing. Despite knowing the risks, Marcus pulled over, activating his phone's recording function and alerting his security team via text. The officer who approached was Richard Caldwell himself, clearly operating outside his jurisdiction and against direct orders to avoid contact with Marcus or Eloise. "License and registration," Caldwell demanded, flashlight beam deliberately angled to blind Marcus. "Officer Caldwell, you know who I am, and you're aware you've been ordered to have no contact with my family," Marcus replied calmly, keeping his hands visible on the steering wheel. "This stop is inappropriate and potentially violates the restraining order." Caldwell's expression hardened. "I received a report of a vehicle matching this description involved in a hit and run. Step out of the car, please." The fabricated pretext was transparent, but Marcus found himself in the dangerous position familiar to many black men, alone with a hostile officer on a dark road. His diplomatic status offered theoretical protection, But immunity meant little in the immediate reality of power dynamics between an armed officer and a black civilian. "I'm declining to exit the vehicle, and I'm contacting my security team and legal counsel," Marcus stated firmly, careful to make no sudden movements. "This stop appears retaliatory and lacks probable cause." Caldwell's hand moved to his weapon. "Refusing an officer's lawful order, that's your choice, Ambassador." The tense standoff continued for 12 excruciating minutes until multiple vehicles arrived simultaneously, Marcus's security detail and senior officers from Atlanta PD. Alerted by Marcus's emergency text, Caldwell was immediately ordered to stand down by his furious superior. "This officer is suspended and has no authority to conduct traffic stops," the police captain explained, his expression grim. "Ambassador Bennett, on behalf of the department, I apologize for this incident." While Caldwell was escorted away, Marcus received a call from his attorney. "Marcus, we have a serious problem. The district attorney's office just informed me they're filing charges against you for alleged witness tampering and obstruction of justice. They claim you pressured officers to change their statements regarding your mother's incident. The charges were completely fabricated, based on alleged evidence that Marcus knew didn't exist, yet they represented a dangerous escalation, a direct attempt to criminalize his pursuit of justice. If convicted, he could face jail time and would certainly lose his diplomatic position." The State Department's response was swift and concerning. By morning, Marcus received a formal communication. "In light of pending criminal charges, the department requests your immediate return to Washington for consultation regarding your continued service as ambassador." It wasn't technically a recall, but the implication was clear. His superiors were distancing themselves from the controversy. When Marcus called the Secretary of State directly, her response was carefully diplomatic, but unmistakably cold. "Marcus, you've been an exemplary ambassador, but these allegations require our attention. Your temporary return to Washington is in everyone's best interest while this matter is resolved." The pressure intensified when Marcus learned that Jamaica's opposition party had begun questioning the wisdom of having an ambassador embroiled in controversy. The political fallout was spreading internationally, just as his opponents had likely intended. While Marcus navigated these professional threats, Eloise faced a medical crisis brought on by the unrelenting stress. During a community organizing meeting, she experienced chest pains and difficulty breathing. Rushed to the hospital, she was diagnosed with stress-induced cardiac symptoms requiring immediate intervention. "Your mother needs absolute rest and minimal stress," her cardiologist advised Marcus firmly. "Her body can't sustain this level of anxiety. The next episode could be significantly worse." Marcus sat beside Eloise's hospital bed, holding her hand as she slept fitfully, monitors beeping steadily around them. His phone vibrated with urgent messages from attorneys, community leaders, and diplomatic colleagues, all requiring immediate attention. The weight of responsibility to his mother, his community, his country, his career, pressed upon him with crushing force. When he finally returned to Eloise's home to retrieve some personal items for her hospital stay, Marcus discovered the house had been broken into despite the security system. The intruders had targeted specific items, the USB drive containing the whistleblower's evidence, which Marcus had fortunately kept elsewhere, Eloise's personal journals, and community organizing documents. The violation of their home, while Eloise lay in a hospital bed, represented a new low in the campaign against them. But the true depths of their opponent's tactics became clear when Marcus received an urgent call from his attorney the next morning. "Marcus, the DA just amended the charges against you to include assault on a police officer. They claim to have video showing you physically threatening Officer Caldwell during last night's traffic stop." "That's impossible," Marcus replied. "I never left my vehicle, and my own recording proves it. They're claiming to have dashcam footage showing otherwise. It has to be fabricated, but they're moving for immediate arrest." The fabricated assault charge represented an elaborate trap. If Marcus appeared in court to fight the false charges, he would be temporarily surrendering his diplomatic immunity for that proceeding. Once in custody, he could find himself entangled in a legal nightmare specifically designed to remove him from the equation, while the development plans proceeded unchallenged. Simultaneously, Marcus received word that developers had begun accelerated outreach to homeowners in Eloise's neighborhood, pressuring them to sell quickly before property values declined further due to ongoing controversies. With both Marcus and Eloise neutralized, the community's resistance was losing its most powerful advocates. In his hotel room that night, Marcus faced the most difficult decision of his career. Fighting the fabricated charges would likely cost him his ambassadorship and possibly his freedom. Abandoning the fight would betray his mother and her community. Neither option seemed tenable, yet he had to choose a path forward as powerful forces maneuvered to destroy everything he and his mother had worked for. As Marcus contemplated his impossible choice, an unexpected lifeline emerged. The Jamaican Prime Minister called personally, offering not just moral support, but tangible assistance. "Ambassador Bennett, Jamaica stands with you in this fight. We have formally requested that the U.S. State Department affirm your diplomatic immunity against these obviously fabricated charges." This international intervention dramatically altered the dynamic. Diplomatic immunity wasn't simply a personal protection for Marcus. It represented the Jamaican government's sovereign interests. Challenging it directly would create an international incident beyond what local developers had anticipated. Simultaneously, Marcus received a call from a senior Justice Department official. "Ambassador, we've opened a formal civil rights investigation into the Atlanta Police Department based on the evidence you provided. Federal agents will secure all relevant records tomorrow morning." The federal intervention brought resources and authority that transcended local corruption. Within hours, the FBI executed search warrants at police headquarters, Westside development offices, and several city departments. The scale and speed of the operation caught Marcus's opponents off guard, preventing the destruction of critical evidence. A pivotal breakthrough came from an entirely unexpected source. Jamal, Marcus's 17-year-old son, had been analyzing the allegedly corrupted body camera footage, using techniques he'd learned in his computer science classes. "Dad, it wasn't corrupted, it was deliberately altered. I can prove it." Jamal had discovered digital fingerprints in the metadata showing exactly when and how the footage had been tampered with. More importantly, he had recovered fragments of the original video showing Officer Caldwell explicitly targeting Eloise because of her address in a transition zone and making racist comments about cleaning out the neighborhood. Marcus immediately provided this technical analysis to federal investigators and trusted journalists. The Atlanta Technology Review published a detailed examination of the evidence tampering, exposing the systematic cover-up that extended into the department's technical division. As federal pressure intensified, cracks in the conspiracy widened. Their key turning point came when 3 officers from Caldwell's precinct approached federal investigators seeking immunity deals in exchange for testimony. Their statements revealed the full scope of the operation. Officers had been incentivized with overtime pay for increased enforcement in targeted neighborhoods, with unofficial quotas for stops and citations against long-time residents. Meanwhile, Eloise had recovered enough to leave the hospital, though she remained under medical monitoring. Despite her doctor's recommendations for reduced stress, she insisted on attending a crucial community hearing organized by the Urban Justice Coalition. Her appearance, still wearing a heart monitor beneath her dress, galvanized the community and attracted national media attention. Standing before hundreds of residents and cameras, Eloise delivered the testimony of her lifetime. "I've spent 50 years in this neighborhood watching it transform through civil rights struggles, economic hardships, and social change. Through it all, we built a community where people looked after one another. Now we're told our homes and histories are merely obstacles to profit. I may not live to see the end of this fight, but I will spend every breath I have left ensuring that justice prevails, not just for me, but for every family that deserves to age with dignity in the home they built." Her powerful words spread across social media, generating millions of views and drawing support from civil rights leaders nationwide. What had begun as one woman's harassment now symbolized the broader struggle against discriminatory development practices occurring in cities across America. As public pressure mounted, internal disputes erupted among the conspirators. Councilman Gregory Caldwell publicly denounced his nephew, claiming he had gone rogue and acted against department policies. The police chief announced Officer Caldwell's termination, attempting to portray him as a lone bad actor rather than part of a systematic problem. Westside Development's investors began quietly distancing themselves from the project, concerned about potential RICO charges as the federal investigation expanded to include financial fraud and civil rights violations. The company's stock price plummeted as analysts questioned their legal exposure. The most dramatic development came when Marcus received an anonymous package containing a flash drive. The sender's note read simply, "Insurance policy, good luck." The drive contained recordings of planning meetings between developers, police officials, and city planners, explicitly discussing the use of enhanced enforcement to drive out undesirable elements from targeted neighborhoods. Most damning was video of a private dinner where Officer Caldwell received a Community Partnership Award from Westside Development, along with what appeared to be an envelope of cash just weeks before. Eloise's harassment. The smoking gun established the direct connection between police misconduct and development interests that Marcus had been working to prove. With this evidence, federal prosecutors expanded their investigation to include corruption and civil rights conspiracy charges. The district attorney, facing scrutiny over the fabricated charges against Marcus, quickly moved to dismiss all allegations, claiming they had been filed in error based on misunderstood evidence. The State Department, sensing the changing political winds, issued a statement reaffirming Marcus's diplomatic status and commending his commitment to constitutional values. His temporary recall to Washington was quietly forgotten as officials scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. As the external pressure subsided, Marcus still faced one final dangerous confrontation. While escorting Eloise to a medical appointment, they were approached in the parking garage by two men who had been identified in the whistleblower files as security contractors for Westside Development. "Ambassador Bennett," one called out, his hand suspiciously hidden beneath his jacket, "we need to talk about your future plans." Marcus positioned himself between the men and his mother, acutely aware they were alone in the concrete structure. Before the situation could escalate further, Jamaican security personnel emerged from nearby vehicles, weapons drawn, creating a protective formation around Marcus and Eloise. "These individuals are under diplomatic protection," the security chief stated firmly. "Back away immediately." The confrontation ended without violence, but its message was clear. Even as the legal case progressed, physical threats remained. Marcus made the difficult decision to relocate Eloise temporarily to Jamaica, where she could recover under the protection of the Jamaican government, while the case against Westside Development and their police allies moved through federal courts. 3 years later, Marcus stood at the podium in Atlanta's City Hall Plaza, addressing a crowd gathered for the dedication of the Eloise Bennett Community Protection Act. The comprehensive legislation, passed after lengthy legal battles and public pressure, established strict oversight of police practices in gentrifying neighborhoods and provided legal protections for long-time residents against displacement. "This law represents more than policy reform," Marcus told the assembled crowd, which included many elderly residents from his mother's neighborhood. "It embodies our commitment that no one should face harassment or intimidation simply for existing in a community that others have decided is suddenly valuable." The federal investigation had ultimately resulted in 37 indictments against police officers, city officials, and Westside Development executives. Officer Richard Caldwell had received a 15-year sentence for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and corruption. His uncle, Councilman Gregory Caldwell, was serving 8 years for racketeering and conspiracy. The police chief had resigned in disgrace after evidence emerged of his direct knowledge of the harassment campaign. Eloise, now 78, sat in the front row, her face reflecting both satisfaction and lingering sadness. The past 3 years had taken their toll on her health, but her spirit remained unbroken. She had returned to her home after extensive renovations to repair the damage from break-ins and vandalism. determined to live out her days in the community she had helped build. The neighborhood itself had undergone remarkable transformation, not through gentrification but through community-led development. Using settlement funds from the successful class action lawsuit against Westside Development, residents had established a community land trust to preserve affordable housing and prevent displacement. New businesses opened with local ownership. Requirements, ensuring economic benefits remained within the community. For Marcus, the victory had come with professional consequences. While he had retained his ambassadorship through the crisis, the political battles had limited his diplomatic advancement. His outspoken advocacy had branded him as too political in a system that preferred its diplomats to avoid controversy. Yet he considered this a small price for the justice achieved. After the ceremony, Marcus helped Eloise back to her home, now a gathering place for community organizers and youth activists who sought her wisdom. As they settled on her porch, she took his hand. "You know, when all this started, I just wanted that officer disciplined for how he treated me. I never imagined we'd end up changing laws." "You taught me to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost," Marcus replied. "Everything I did was just applying your lessons." As they shared tea on the porch, a sleek car pulled up across the street. Marcus tensed automatically, old instincts kicking in, before recognizing City Councilwoman Sharon Davis emerging from the vehicle. Davis had been elected on a progressive platform following the scandal, promising to prioritize community preservation over developer interests. "Mrs. Bennett, Ambassador," she greeted them warmly. "I wanted to personally thank you for your presence today. The legislation wouldn't have happened without your persistence." After exchanging pleasantries, Davis mentioned casually, "I thought you should know Robert Thorne is announcing his candidacy for mayor next week." The name sent a chill through Marcus. Robert Thorne had been Westside Development's chief legal counsel, implicated in the scandal, but never formally charged due to lack of direct evidence. He had kept a low profile during the investigations, while maintaining his connections to influential political donors. "He's restructured his image completely," Davis continued. "His platform focuses on neighborhood revitalization and community policing, the same code words, just repackaged." As Davis departed, Eloise and Marcus sat in troubled silence. The victory they had fought so hard to achieve suddenly seemed fragile and incomplete. The system had bent under pressure but hadn't fundamentally transformed. Some players had been removed, but others waited in the wings, ready to resume the same patterns with more sophisticated tactics. "It's never really over, is it?" Eloise finally said, her voice carrying the weight of decades fighting against persistent injustice. Marcus squeezed her hand. "No, Mama. That's why the next generation needs to hear your story. The fight continues, but now they'll know what signs to look for and how to stand against them." As the sun set over Atlanta, Marcus contemplated the complexity of their victory. They had won justice for Eloise and protection for her community, setting important legal precedents in the process. Yet, true transformation required constant vigilance against forces that would reconfigure rather than relinquish their power. The resilience of systemic racism, its ability to adapt and resurface under new guises, meant that each victory was both meaningful and incomplete. For every officer Caldwell held accountable, others would learn to operate with greater subtlety. For every exploitative development plan exposed, others would proceed under more carefully crafted pretexts. This understanding didn't diminish their achievement, but placed it in proper perspective. They had won an important battle that would protect vulnerable communities for years to come. The war itself against displacement, discrimination, and the devaluing of Black lives and communities would continue long after they were gone. As neighbors began gathering on nearby porches, waving and calling out greetings to Eloise, Marcus took comfort in knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, his mother would face them surrounded by the community she had fought to preserve, a community now strengthened by shared struggle, and the knowledge that justice, while imperfect and incomplete, was possible when people stood together against powerful interests. The elderly woman who had once trembled before an intimidating officer now sat as the neighborhood's revered elder, her courage having catalyzed a movement that extended far beyond one incident on a street corner. That transformation from victim to champion, from isolated target to community cornerstone, represented the most profound victory of all. This story powerfully illustrates that justice doesn't happen in isolation. It requires collective action against systemic oppression. True change demands persistence in the face of escalating resistance, as those with power will use every tool available, from legal manipulation to character assassination, to maintain the status quo. Eloise and Marcus's journey shows that victories against discrimination are rarely complete. Rather, they're chapters in an ongoing struggle that requires constant vigilance. When institutional racism intersects with economic interests, the barriers to justice multiply exponentially. Yet, this story also demonstrates that no system is impenetrable when communities unite, when courage confronts intimidation, and when people in positions of privilege use their power to uplift others. Most importantly, it reminds us that every individual act of resistance, no matter how small, contributes to the larger fight for dignity, respect, and equality. What systemic injustice have you witnessed or experienced in your own community? Comment below with your story or thoughts on how ambassadors for change can emerge from unexpected places. If you believe in standing against discrimination wherever it appears, hit that like button to support stories that expose uncomfortable truths. Subscribe to join our community dedicated to amplifying voices of resilience and courage. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how discrimination operates through seemingly neutral systems like urban development and policing. Thank you for bearing witness to Eloise's journey. May her determination inspire each of us to speak truth to power, even when our voices shake.